Key driver diagrams can take many forms, ranging from simple and high level like the example from the last video, to deep and complex. The level of detail in the KDD will likely be shaped by the complexity of the problem or scenario you are trying to address or improve, the scope of the project and goals, and the number of resources and time you will have to carry out the project. In this video, we will provide tips for constructing the driver portion of a simple KDD. We'll also discuss how to expand to secondary drivers for a more complex and detailed KDD. As described in Part 1, drivers are variables, factors, or influences that you believe need to be in place to achieve the goal. Recall that the driver portion, or the middle part of the KDD, can serve as a way of tracking your hypotheses about what you think might help you achieve your SMART aims. To get a strong set of drivers in place for a KDD, the team can brainstorm drivers as they did in Part 1, but it is also important to emphasize that teams should rely on multiple sources to refine their drivers. They can do a literature search to find evidence of valuable or important methods to arrive at their goal. They might also use tools such as a Gemba walk to observe people in the act of their daily workflows and processes, and make note of what things might serve as facilitators or barriers to employee wellness. Besides a Gemba walk, your team can consider using process mapping, a fishbone diagram, the 5 whys, and many other tools. Finally, they might consider gathering information from employees themselves through interviews or surveys. With the information gathered from each of these sources, the team may add new drivers, combine existing ones, or update original drivers to arrive at a clearer list that will help reach their aim. Let's return to our example from Part 1. The team created a simple KDD with a SMART aim for each person to get in 10,000 steps each day by 10 p.m. Let's take a closer look at what makes good drivers. First, it's important that the drivers are written in positive framing, often beginning with adjectives like these drivers from Part 1. Frequent opportunities to move more, effective system for accountability, and consistent way to track steps. It might be tempting to write some drivers in negative framing like, stop being sedentary, but this statement lacks direction about what the team should do to achieve the SMART aim. In contrast, frequent opportunities to move more clearly communicates what the team believes needs to be in place to get in 10,000 steps. Another helpful tip is to consider the use of secondary drivers to help separate more complex drivers into smaller elements. Sometimes we know our scope is bigger, and we build the KDD right away with primary and secondary drivers. Other times we may add them as the project moves along. For example, let's say that as the team began trialing interventions toward the identified drivers, they realized that frequent opportunities to move more required both time and resources to work. An effective system for accountability requires incentives and challenges. Finally, they realize there should be mechanisms for tracking both individual and team steps. Draw arrows from the secondary drivers to the primary drivers they support. Once the team finishes delineating primary and secondary drivers, they would then revise their actionable interventions and connect them to the new secondary drivers they support with arrows as well. When writing robust drivers to achieve your SMART aim, remember these tips. 1. Derive drivers from multiple sources. 2. Frame them positively and use adjectives. 3. Consider using secondary drivers to further break down complex drivers. Lastly, remember that as you refine your drivers, the KDD is a living document that can and should change on an ongoing basis.